Oops. So it is now 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, so it's time for the Sunday sermon. You know, I make these talks, I never plan these talks, I make them up as I go along. And one of the things which I did, which I'm really quite proud of, and always remember, was I made a lot of contacts with the leaders of other religions here in Perth. And on one occasion, the Dean of the Anglican Church over here, Dean Shepherd, he invited me to give the Sunday sermon at the cathedral here in Perth. Did any of you go to that? No, I did. Because he said it was the first time in 2,000 years that a non-Christian had actually given a Sunday sermon at a full Eucharist. It was kind of fun to be able to do that. And when I told all the members in Nollamara, they were very supportive. And also, I remember because of that, you had to do a interview on live TV, first of all. And I remember just going with Ajahn Brahm in the same car that day to the studio to do the interview. And there they said, I know you're a Buddhist monk, but if you go on these live interviews, you have to wear makeup. I should have asked before instead of afterwards, has anybody refused? And he said, this pop singer with Oasis, apparently he refused. And if I'd have asked earlier, I said, well, if he can get away with it, why can't I? But anyway, I still remember Ajahn Brahm watching me, you know, making some... Well, that was actually amazing, because all the people who went there, when I looked at them, you know, from the pulpit in my brown robes, I couldn't tell who was a Buddhist and who was an Anglican. I thought, why can't the whole world be like that, where we can share sort of, you know, our friendship, instead of seeing who's better and who's worse. And that brings me on to one important part of how the Buddha described a fully enlightened being. Now I bring this up because it shows you, when you have an idea of, you know, what the end of this path is, it gives you a very good idea of what you should be practicing to reach the end of that path. And that was when, in one of the suttas, Ananda was with the Buddha, and then first this one monk came up to the Buddha and said, you know, one who is enlightened, fully enlightened, never thinks they're better than anyone else, never thinks they're worse than anybody else, never thinks they're the same as anybody else. I said, correct, well done. Another monk came up and said the same. If you're enlightened, you never think you're better, worse, or the same. Correct, he said. And then the Buddha turned around to Ananda and said, that's how to newly enlightened beings explain their attainments to me. They're not better, they're not worse, they're not the same. That's a very beautiful little description of where we are heading towards. So you never think you're better or worse or the same. So what are you trying to attain? What are you trying to get? Where are you trying to go? Instead of trying to get anywhere, go anywhere, or be anyone, see if you can just be here. Be who you are, not. In other words, let go of all this trying to attain things, to get somewhere. That's one of the problems with the spiritual path. These amazing states are possible, they're reachable. But one of the things I always say at this time of the retreat, please do not get enlightened early on the retreat. Otherwise you'll have nothing else to do the last 4 or 5 days. You get bored. And anyway, I've often noticed this, as I said earlier, your best meditations are usually at the very end of the retreat. Why is that? Because you've been trying so hard, trying all sorts of tricks to get these, these deep meditations and jhanas, and you never get anywhere. So I like it till the last day of the retreat. I usually tell people, look, be rational. You've been trying so hard, you haven't got anywhere in all these days, nice teachings, nice food, great weather, everything is perfect for you. You got nowhere. So you're not going to get anywhere now, are you? And when I say that, people give up. They let go. They renounce. And they come and say, Ajahn Brahm, that was so wonderful. That's when these things happen. This is not a joke. This is really fascinating. The times when some of the students say the most amazing experiences is after they've given up. After they've let go. They've renounced. And so the simile to describe that, there's a lot of similes. It's not just sitting perfectly still under the mango tree. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it, with your hand out of compassion. But let's do it even more deeper. And that was my simile of the donkey. Now we've got such a wide audience here from so many different countries. Usually it's somewhere in Malaysian or Singaporean. So I say the donkey and the durian. But it started off as a simile of the donkey and the carrot. And because, what's the favourite fruit over in Korea? South Korea? Apple? That's very Western. Okay. The donkey and the apple. So once upon a time, if you're sitting comfortably, which is not always the case on a retreat, the farmer had a donkey, and he wanted to get the donkey to pull the cart, to take the produce to the market. How do you get a donkey to pull a cart? Donkeys are very, very, very stubborn. If you've got a husband and think he's stubborn, he's no match to a donkey. So you can get a stick and beat the donkey. It won't move. That's how stubborn a donkey is. But you don't beat the donkey with a stick. You tie the stick to the donkey's neck. and the front of the stick is 2 foot in front of the donkey's mouth. You put a string on the end of the stick, so on the end of the string you put a apple, a South Korean apple, not an Aussie apple. And so what does the donkey see? Donkey sees the carrot. No, it doesn't see the carrot. That's me. The donkey sees the apple on the end of the string. When the donkey sees the apple on the end of the string, what does the donkey do? He moves towards the apple, because donkeys like apples, if they're Korean donkeys. I don't know if an Australian donkey would go for the apple. Do you reckon it would? It would? Okay. You must have more experience of being a donkey than me. So anyway, the donkey goes towards the apple, and because the donkey goes towards the apple, the stick goes forward, so the apple moves forward as well. No matter how fast that donkey runs after the apple, it can never catch it. The apple is always 2 foot in front of the donkey's mouth. That's how the owner of the donkey can get it to pull anything. That's how your boss at work gets you to work so hard. Understand? Gets you to work, because if you work harder, you get promotion. If you get promotion, you get more money. If you get more money, you pay more tax, so you need more money. So you work your whole life. Do you earn enough at work? I don't. I don't earn anything. Anyway, so it fools the donkey into pulling the cart. Now, one of the reasons you don't see donkeys pulling carts these days in South Korea, you know why? Because people, including donkeys, are Buddhist in South Korea. The Buddhist donkeys figured out how to catch that carrot simply. It's how you can catch enlightenment, if you understand the meaning of this simile. I just mentioned something like that, enlightenment, and everyone goes serious and they really start listening to me. So, how do you catch the apple? How you catch the apple is you run as fast as you can after it. You've been doing that all your life. And then, the donkey knows how to stop. Whenever I hear the word stop, I always think of Angulimala, where Angulimala, chasing the Buddha to kill him, shouted, "Stop, monk, stop!" And the Buddha said, "I have stopped, you stop." And Angulimala understood that instruction. He didn't stop running. He stopped all of his desires and ill will and everything else. And he became enlightened. So the donkey is running as fast as he can and then stops. What happens to the apple in front of donkey? You can imagine this, you may have seen that before. The apple goes further and further and further and further away from the donkey's mouth. It goes further than it's ever been before. You know, sometimes when people come on my meditation retreats, Ajahn Brahm, we should be more strict. Ajahn Brahm, we should take notes of people who don't come for the morning chanting, so they can never get into a retreat ever again. Ajahn Brahm, everybody who falls asleep doing meditation should take notes of them. It should be more strict. Am I a strict teacher? You do? At least they're honest donkeys. So it goes further, and that's what you experience sometimes. That, you know, what you thought was a good retreat, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse. Great. you're making progress. And then the donkey gets further than it's ever been before. Not the donkey, sorry, the carrot. Same thing. The donkey gets further away from the carrot or the apple than it's ever been before. And then, about 4 foot in front of its mouth. And then what happens? Does the donkey put forth any effort? The donkey has patience. It continues just watching and not doing anything. Have you heard any teachers say that before? Just don't do anything, just be patient. And what happens is the donkey starts the carrot starts not the carrot's an apple now. The apple starts swinging towards the donkey. And soon it's its usual position. Just how the meditation usually is for you, just hopeless. It's a usual position, but now it's coming towards you really fast. You've never seen meditation be like that before. You're not doing anything at all, you're just letting go, being still, and then the apple comes towards you. And soon it comes right to the place you've always wanted it to be, right in front of your mouth. There's one last thing you must remember. It's not just stillness. It's always compassion as well. As it comes that close, you have to kind of think, disturb the stillness a tiny bit, and say to the apple, "Apple, the door of my mouth is open to you." Otherwise, you've seen donkey's teeth. Donkey's teeth are huge. Otherwise, the apple bounces off the teeth. Oh, I missed my chance. That's how donkeys catch carrots. Simple. Or catch apples or whatever they want. They run after it very fast. You've been doing that all your life. And now you stop. And when you stop, the apple or the carrot or the durian, whatever you're chasing after, goes further away and then it comes towards you. It goes into your mouth. That's called the method of meditation. Ajahn Brahm, what are you talking about? Can't you tell us how to watch the breath and how to do loving kindness meditation? Of course I can. But you can read that in books. You read it in books, does it work? Instead of reading in books, you get the heart, the essence. Why? What's the heart of Buddhist meditation? It's learning how to let go. Sometimes I used to say, I'm going to be more scholastic now. Well, how do you become enlightened? Eightfold Path. What's the most important factor of the Eightfold Path? Every one of them is the most important. But I'm going to focus now on the second factor of the Eightfold Path, simply because hardly anybody pays attention to it. And the second factor of the Eightfold Path is, actually you all know my translations, what do you think is the meaning of the second factor of the Eightfold Path? You've been listening to me for so many years. Sometimes people say, right, intention. No, intention is actually where you want to go to. This is where you're coming from. Motivation. And the right motivations are motivations of renunciation, kindness, and gentleness. And I really, when I first saw that and learnt Pali and understood the meaning of those words, I thought, wow, this is what I've been looking for. Where is kindness mentioned in the Eightfold Path? I knew it was so important, and many teachers emphasized the kindness, Where is it in the Eightfold Path? It was the second factor. It was the second factor of the second part of the Eightfold Path. And I was kind of delighted in discovering that. And with that came the next one, the third part of the second factor of the Eightfold Path, was a gentleness. Because like violence, force never made any sense to me, honestly. Why any sort of Zen master would want to hit a disciple never made sense. Why any teacher would actually treat his disciples harshly and fiercely, I couldn't make sense of. Ajahn Chah would never do that. And even the fiercest monk in the whole of Thailand at that time was Ajahn Mahabua. Many monks were scared of him. He was very tough. And I went to visit him for a week once, and when I went to visit him, the other monks told me there was a very strict rule. You'd only eat one meal a day, and you couldn't start eating your food until Ajahn Mahabua started. And when Ajahn Mahabua finished, everyone else had to finish. So they said, you'll see us, when he starts, we'll be eating really fast. Because when the teacher finishes, that's it, we can't eat. So I was prepared. They were all waiting. Like the start of a race. So as soon as Ajahn Mahabua started to eat, everyone was eating really fast, including me. And then that morning, Ajahn Mahabua couldn't have been that hungry, so he stopped eating. Everyone else stopped, including me. And Ajahn Mahabua looked at me and he said, you, carry on eating. He ordered me to continue eating. You know why? Because I was really thin in those days. If he saw me these days, he's passed away. If he saw me these days, he wouldn't even let me start. Because that was the kind of the kindness he saw, you need some food. So carry on eating. And that's what I always remembered. Those acts of kindness. That was how to train a person. Not with force, with kindness. Encouraging them. Showing them the wonderful things which happen if you get up early and you feel like getting up and you want to meditate. You look forward to meditation. Can I be honest with you? Whenever there's a meditation retreat, even, I think it was Ajahn Brahm told me just a couple of days ago, so don't you get tired of teaching all these meditation retreats? I had to be honest with him. No, I don't. I look forward to these. I love meditating. It's what I really love doing. Give me more. Give me more. I must admit, can I be honest with you? When it comes to interviews, please, in the interviews today, please ask me meditation questions. Don't ask me questions about relationships. Look, I've been celibate over 51 years. What do I know about relationships? I live alone. I got my hut, which is a cave. So you're asking the wrong person those questions. Asking about your kids and their education. What do I know? I'll make it up for you, but I can't claim to be an expert. But anyhow, but the meditation part, I love that. Always have. Why? Why is meditation so much fun? Honestly, do you agree with me on that? Or are you still struggling with meditation? Because I'm not doing anything. I'm basically a lazy monk. I confess. lazy. I just want to sit there and do nothing. I want to wait for the mangoes to come to me. Or the apples to come to me. And they do. That's one of the wonderful things about the Buddhist practice. You always think you need more effort. Stop it! If you're at work, fine, put some effort in. But if you're just doing meditation, just sit there and do nothing. And then people say, oh, if I sit here and do nothing, I fall asleep. Well done. That's one of the first stages. You're learning how to relax and take it easy. How long can you sleep for? Not that long. Then you get your energies back. When you get your energies back, you feel alive. That's why one of the great ways to get enlightened, I was going to say this after the carrot or the apple and the donkey, one of the great ways to become enlightened is the Ananda method of enlightenment. A few people are grinning because I know this story, but it was real. This actually happened to Venerable Ananda, the attendant to the Buddha for over 25 years. And during all that time, listening to all these amazing teachings and hearing other monks come up to the Buddha and said, one who's enlightened never thinks they're better, worse, or the same as anybody else. Yes, correct. That's another enlightened one. Imagine you're the attendant and you hear, I don't know how many, of 25 years? He must have heard so many hundreds and thousands of monks and nuns become fully enlightened. As for him, no. Imagine what it must feel like. Suppose at the end of this retreat, I make the announcement that all of you have become enlightened, except for you. Oh, that's really unfair. And that's kind of how Ananda felt when the Buddha passed away. All his friends were all enlightened, but he wasn't. He'd done such a great service, but he still wasn't following the Buddha's instructions to the limit. He hadn't become enlightened yet. And so organizing everything for others, then they decided to have a big meeting together. 500 meditators were going to meet together in the Satapana cave to collect all the teachings they had heard and to put them all together in these books to become the Dhamma Vinaya. So remember, the Buddha said, after I pass away, these teachings will be your teacher. So they had to get them all together to know which ones were authorized, which ones weren't. And so they invited 500. 499 of those were enlightened. The one exception was Venerable Ananda. He had been the Lord Buddha's attendant. He'd heard so much and he had a very good memory, but he wasn't enlightened yet. So they decided to make him the exception. Imagine that you were going to this big conference and everyone else was fully enlightened except for you. How would you feel? Pretty awful. So anyway, he was invited to go. So the night before, he decided it's enlightenment or bust tonight. No sleep. He stayed up all night and he meditated. He knew all the instructions, so he thought. Do you know all the instructions? How many talks of monks like me have you heard? Sometimes I wondered, some of you have been coming here for years and years and years, one year after another. Are you enlightened yet? How come? You know all my funny stories, the jokes, and all the unfunny ones as well. And you've gone to sutta classes, you know how the Buddha taught. Why on earth aren't you enlightened yet? Come on. So Ananda wasn't enlightened either yet. So Ananda decided he can stay up all night. How many of you can stay up tonight? Huh? All night? Huh? Oh, come on. No, don't do that. So what Ananda did, stayed up all night, meditating and meditating and meditating. Meditation or bust. Anyone who thinks like that, you always bust. Why? Because you want something. You're not still. You're trying to get something. Just that much prevents you. So Ananda was trying to get enlightened out of pride. He felt really sort of a dummy, being with the Buddha for 25 years, all these great monks around him, and he wasn't enlightened yet. So anyway, he tried and tried and tried. As the dawn came up, he opened his eyes. Waste of time. So what did he do? He decided, there's still time, he can do without the food, he was a bit disappointed. He decided to just go and take a nap. That's what he did. He went to his room to lay down and get at least half an hour, maybe, before the meeting started. And just before his head hit the pillow, yay! The 500th Arahat came into being. He became enlightened when he stopped trying. Just like the donkey. Stopped chasing the carrot or the apple, and the apple came towards him. That's a true story. So then he thought, the other monks may not believe me. So what he decided to do was to come to the meeting deliberately late. So the other 499 fully enlightened beings were inside the cave, and he hadn't turned up. They waited for him a bit longer because he was an important member, had all this knowledge of what the Buddha said, but hadn't turned up. So they closed the door and locked it. And then Ananda was waiting for this. And after the door of the cave was locked, he came in through the keyhole in a blaze of light. It's called making an entrance. And he made a big entrance. And then people realized that something had happened. He'd become that 500th Arahat in that meeting. Yeah, wonderful. So I call that the Ananda method of enlightenment. So the more times you return to your room and lay down. I know I was a mathematician before. It's called statistics, probability theory. The more time you go and lay down, the more the odds are in your favor. That's a bit of exaggeration. You've got to be putting the time in first of all. But if you ever do feel tired, any time on this retreat, please, we do have a schedule, but forget about schedules. Except for breakfast and lunch. We'd always keep those. All the talks are all recorded, and you know what they're talking about anyway. Some of you know these talks better than I do. Which brings me on to the other great story of Albert Einstein. Einstein, he did all his great work over in Europe, and when people found out just how brilliant he was, they got together and got him a nice airfare on the boat. You didn't have really planes in those days, to actually go from Europe over to United States to do a lecture tour. Ajahn Brahm, control yourself. Best universities on the East Coast, the Ivy League universities. And so when he arrived, the organizer of this lecture tour told him that, we've arranged a car for you and a professional driver from the Bronx with a thick New York accent. He's to drive you from college to college. Everyone is so excited to meet you at last. There's been no videos of you, obviously this was a time before videos. And the only knowledge we have of you is a few photographs which have appeared in the newspapers. That was the only way that information was disseminated in those days. So he got into the car, went to the first university. Great to meet you, Professor Einstein. We've heard so much about you. It's the first time we've actually seen you. So they gave him a dinner, and then he went up on the stage to give a lecture on general relativity. It's brilliant. And then he went to the next university, another lecture, exactly the same content, maybe the same words even, just like my talks. Is that the case? These two have been listening to my talks for such a long time, they could actually do what the driver of Albert Einstein did eventually. So after about 3 or 4 talks, the driver was just mentioning to Professor Einstein, I've been listening to your talk, 4 or 5 of them, they're all the same. He said, yeah, that's what they asked for. So he said, I think I've heard it so many times, even I could give that talk. And Albert Einstein thought, that's a good idea. So the next university they went to, actually they swapped places in the car. Albert Einstein put on the driver's uniform and was driving the car, and the driver from the Bronx was sitting in the back. And when they got to that university, of course they ignored the driver. They just opened the back door for who they thought was Professor Einstein. And he came out, welcome Professor Einstein, it's a great honor you've come to our university. We're all so excited to meet you. And he replied in a Bronx accent, which I can't speak. But they were a bit suspicious, but they thought, well, he's sitting in the back, it must be him. And so they gave him a nice dinner, and then he went to the hall to give the lecture. And it was brilliant. Exactly what Albert Einstein would say. And then, of course, question time. There was a couple of physicists there who were thinking, we never knew that Albert Einstein was born in the Bronx. They decided to test him. They gave him this really tough question on theoretical physics, on general relativity. And then the driver, pretending to be Albert Einstein, looked at them and said, that's really surprising you ask a question like that. That's such a simple question. Even my driver in the back knows the answer to that one. And the driver gave a perfect answer. Okay, let's stop laughing. But anyway, where am I going on this one? It is like learning how to let go. When you can let go, there's many things happen. One, you can have a lot of fun. And if people don't like what you say, that's even more fun. You can have more peace and quiet. That's what I said. That monk in Thailand who got sent to jail he didn't do any crimes, it just someone was jealous of him. In jail for 2.5 years. He said it was brilliant in Jhana. He would just sit there in his hut, get up whenever he wanted, meditate as long as he wanted, get any books to read he wanted. It was just like, being in a nice forest monastery where he didn't have to do anything. Or like this other story which comes to mind. There's, over in Thailand, I remember this story, there was a young kid, and you can't say he was intellectually challenged, it's just he had learning difficulties at school. And so every kid had to go, to primary school 4 years. And even Ajahn Brahm did 4 years of schooling. And it kind of shocked me. Is that all the education you've had, Ajahn Brahm, just 4 years? He said, yeah, after 4 years, had to leave school. I went to Cambridge University, and he was much, much, much smarter than I was. And that was really challenging. How come that somebody who hadn't achieved much in academia could be way, 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 way smarter than I was? It actually made me start to consider, how do you measure intelligence? You don't measure intelligence by who can pass the exams. That's something quite different. So anyway, Ajahn Brahm did 4 years and was really intelligent. This kid, he couldn't even pass year 1. And I sometimes would love to actually ask, how can you fail year 1 at primary school? The little stick figures you can't do properly. How can you judge anyone on year 1? Crikey. But he failed it. So he had to repeat year 1. All his friends went to year 2. He had to redo year 1. And after the second year at year 1 at primary school in Thailand, he failed again. The teachers, for the best will in the world, they couldn't sort of advance him into year 2. Year 2, sorry. So he did a 3rd year in grade 1. This was his last chance. He also failed the 3rd year in year 1. And after finishing 3 years at school, there's obviously some learning difficulties there, but they didn't have the resources in those days to find out what was wrong and why he couldn't learn like other kids could. So they sent him out of school. And the only place in Thailand where such kids could go, you know where they sent him? To the Buddhist monastery. Not all monks became monks and were sent to the monastery because of that. Is that correct? If they were, I'd accept them, because this is what happened. So he went to the local village monastery, and they tried to teach him. One of the things we have to do is chanting. We all have to. If you're a junior monk or nun, you can always go. While all the other monks are doing the chanting. It's called lip syncing these days. But they didn't have that in those days. So the senior monk was really, really patient. He was a good monk, he was kind. And it took him about 3 or 4 months to teach him Namo. We do Namo Tassa Bhagavato. Namo took him about 3 months to learn. So then he went on to the second part, the Tassa. Namo Tassa. He got to Tassa. What was that first word again? He was really trying the patience of the head monk in this monastery, until the head monk realized, if it takes you about 6 months to learn Namo Tassa, basically we can't help you at all. So he had to send this young monk somewhere else. You know where they sent him? Forest monastery. Not the village monastery. In the forest monastery, all you need to do is to do meditation. This is actually a true story, it's not a joke. And he went to the forest monastery and they taught him how to watch his breath. So easy to do. He soon got into these really deep meditations and soon became another arahat. His mind was so clear and simple. And whenever he needed to do any chanting, what he did, he remembered a previous life when he had learnt that chanting. And he brought that back into his mind when he had to go to anybody's house or lead any chanting anywhere in the world. And that's how he could chant perfectly. I kind of like that story because it challenges the idea of what education is and what's actually needed. So if you have any children, or you know any sort of nephews and nieces who are having a very, very difficult time at school, don't force them. Send them to monastery. They can do really, really well. So that's how we keep a simple mind. Simple, letting things go. And you're sort of learning in a totally different way. And you're being able to serve in a different way. In a very beautiful way. So this is when we understand what meditation really is. What are those three things which I wanted to focus on today? I've only got 15 minutes left to focus on them. I always run out of time. It's one of my... that's why we're supposed to run out of time. They say the Dhamma is akalika. What does akalika mean?
Timeless.
Timeless, yes. Excellent. So take this away, please. Be timeless. So, when we, again, are meditating, please remember that it's one of the things which I noticed when I was practicing a few years ago. Sometimes meditation, I thought, is one thing. The Dhamma is another thing. And sometimes in meditation, if it kind of works, it must be okay, it must be the Dhamma. But these days, no. The Dhamma, please remember the Dhamma which you've read, you've heard, the kindness, the gentleness, the patience, the not wanting, the not trying to get rid of, all of those kilesas they call them, don't indulge them even for the purpose of meditation. If you don't indulge them, that is meditation. And they do coalesce. So those three right motivations. That first one of meditating in order to renounce. And don't just think, oh, renouncing, that means being a monk or a nun. Go deeper than that. Renouncing is given, even as a monk or nun, give up as much as you can. How can you renounce things? Who do you think you are? Please don't shout it out. You're not shouting anything out, which means you must all be fully enlightened now. Congratulations. Who do you take yourself to be? That was the inquiry which I did for myself years ago. Not who you are. That's assuming you are something, just trying to find out who that is. Instead, what do you take yourself to be? Do you take yourself to be your gender? It's great these days because people change genders. That means that wasn't who you were anyway. Are you your age? How old am I now? Many of you found out my last birthday when I announced with full honesty I was 888. People said, Ajahn Brahm, you can't lie. You're not 888. Yes, I am. I was actually just 2 months ago. I'm now 891. No, sorry, 890. Honestly. 890 months. Why do you always have to say in years? So, how old are you? Say it in months. Multiply it by 12. Now you find out how old she really is. And when I say that to people, they kind of laugh. It's something deeper than just a funny story. It's, what do you take yourself to be? Do you take yourself to be your intelligence? How many degrees have you got? That Ajahn Brahm, he used to have 2 MAs, so we called him Mama. If you got a PhD, what does that mean? Permanent head damage. I never invented that. This other PhD over in KL sort of told me that. So what do you take yourself to be? You know, it's amazing that you can take yourself to be so many things, and that's much closer to the truth. Sometimes, you know, you can be a fool. Sometimes you can be a genius. Sometimes you can be so profound. One of the stories I like was from the Nasruddin series of books. So this is Sufi Islam I'm quoting now. And after a retreat, he took all of his students, I'm not going to do this, took all of his students out to like a fair as a reward for how well they'd done in their retreat. And at that fair, like most fairs, there was a little competition, archery competition. You know, you pay a few dollars and you get 3 arrows. If you shoot the target, you get a teddy bear or something. That's not where my teddy bears came from. You know where these ones came from? I don't know, but we only had a couple at first. Now look how they've multiplied. They don't keep the 8 precepts. So come on, behave, teddy bear. Then people donate them. Oh, look at the rabbits. And so at the fair, he bought 3 arrows. And the students said, "We never knew you knew archery." He never responded. He just put the first arrow in the bow, shot it. It only went about halfway to the target. It was a totally hopeless shot. And then he said, "What happened?" And the teacher said, "That was a shot of a hasty man." He put the second arrow in the bow and shot it. That made the distance. It was about a mile to the west of the target. Almost killed somebody. And then they started getting embarrassed. This was like quite a well-known teaching. "You can't so embarrass us like this. Stop now." And he said, No. That was a shot of an arrogant person. And then he put the last arrow in the bow and shot it. It went straight into the bullseye. The students were relieved because they liked their teacher. They praised their teacher. And now he had shown that he could do archery. He said if the first shot was a shot of a hasty man, the second shot was a shot of an arrogant man. Who was that? He said, "That was me." That's how most people do things. You make a mistake, you make another mistake, you say, "Oh, that's not really me." You do something well, and you think, "Oh, that's the real me." Who do you take yourself to be? None of them are you. So you can make mistakes without getting embarrassed. You can do amazing things without getting proud. And let all those things go. You're renouncing. who you think you are. And you can be anything. And once you start to renounce, you also know how to be kind. All things are not because of your skill or lack of skill. They've got other causes. And if those causes are coming from kindness, then you're fine. It's not just kindness, it's a gentleness as well. That's why if you're here in this retreat, you don't go criticizing others, for giving the same joke again week after week. You don't criticize the people in the next room to you for snoring. You say, thank you. Thank you for snoring, for showing me that teaching is not the noise disturbs you, but you disturb the noise. And give me a nice challenge. Then you find the noise doesn't disturb you. And then that gentleness, how many times do you snore? I know many, many people who say, no, it's not me who snores, it's my partner who snores. The person in the next room. You know that when I was teaching in jails, when I was teaching in prisons, that it was such a dangerous place even for men to teach, because some of those people in jails had such a long sentence, basically they could do whatever they wanted. So I always had to have a prison officer with me whenever I was teaching meditation. So I was teaching these small group of prisoners, maybe about 7 or 8 of them, meditation. And after just a few minutes, I heard some snoring. And I opened my eyes. The prisoners were okay. It was a prison officer who was snoring. And one of my disciples had heard him first and had his hand almost about to grab his keys. And I remember looking at my so-called disciple, looking at him, and he looked at me. He told me afterwards it was a very close call, but he decided to respect his teacher and take his hand away. That was a very close call. But if you snore, it means you're tired. And this is one of the things which I will ask you to remember. If you are tired and you start to really feel that tiredness, that sloth and torpor, please do not fight it. What's it teaching you? It teaches you that you are tired. Either go and try Ananda method of enlightenment, go to your bed and lay down, or just leave it as it is and just droop. For many, many years, I had sloth and torpor in Thailand. And then, what do you expect? I was getting up at 3 o'clock every morning. Ajahn Brahm was telling me only 4 hours of sleep during the day, total, night and day and naps and everything. 4 hours is all you're allowed. I couldn't do less than 4.5. And so he got tired. And this was in the jungle. I was born in London. Where are you there? And London Ealing is cool and drizzly. So the weather was just not conducive to meditation, not sleeping enough. And the weather over there was really muggy and hot. And so I never realized it was just causes, not my laziness. Because what happened was, soon I had to go to Bangkok to renew the visa. When I went there, I found there was a place you could stay in this Wat Bhawan monastery, and they had a new building there for visiting monks, and a hall which had aircon. Aircon! Wow! And we could get a room in there. So I could have a nice night's sleep, not being woken up by mosquitoes eating you, and 5 hours instead of just the 4, and good food, not just frog and sticky rice, but kind of nutritious food. So I was getting healthier when I was just waiting for my visa, could sit in the air-conditioned room in the morning, still at 3 o'clock or 3:15, and it made me just no sleepiness at all. All that sloth and torpor disappeared. A lot of times things like sloth and torpor is conditioned, it's not your laziness. And these days, if I'm in any place I haven't slept well at night, and I start with your head down. And the thing which happened to me, which I hope you can experience, start meditating with your head down, and then you find your energy comes back. Because you're not wasting it, fighting it, the energy gets restored, and your head comes up all by itself. And that's wonderful experiences to have that. You realize these things are conditioned from outside of you. So just relax, and then the energy comes back, and you've got a straight face again. That's how to meditate. Let go. Be kind. Be gentle. So simple. Sad. Uh-oh. Yeah, you got a question? What day is it today? Okay. You know, sometimes, honestly, when I do retreats, sometimes I don't know what day it is. Nicholas, you were bringing the food up to me during the last retreat. How many times did I ask you, what day is it today? How many times did I ask you that? 7 or something. Because you don't worry about time, so you have to ask somebody else. What time is it? I kind of like that. So anyway, it is Sunday today. You sure about that? Okay, very good. So, what was the question?
Just confirming, I think you said earlier that interviews would be today, and I just was concerned that some people might be confused. So I was one of the people that might be confused, because we've got them listed for start tomorrow, Monday.
Okay. So just check that you're on that list. Because we don't know what might happen tomorrow. Future's uncertain. So if your name is written down there, you better turn up.
Tomorrow.
Turn up tomorrow.
Or would you like to start on Sunday? I don't mind. Would you like to start today? Because the Monday people can start today if you like.
Okay. So you just got one list down there.
Well, there's a Monday and there's a Tuesday list. And today's Sunday.
Okay. So I'm free today. Yay! Okay.
Or we could swap.
I'll take that.
Okay.
If you really are desperate, you just let me know. Okay, well, I'm happy with that. It's really good. Okay, so no rush today. So no interviews today, they're tomorrow. Great. Okay. You're very kind. And I recommend you to be the retreat manager next year.
Okay, I've got the clue right.
Okay.
Sure, you're welcome to.